Welcome, everyone, to Saving for the Future for People with Disabilities. I see we have lots of people joining us. My name is Liz Fust. I'm the founder and executive director of Gathering Strength, which is a nonprofit organization in Louisville, Kentucky. I have a spinal cord injury myself, and I use a wheelchair. Gathering Strength empowers people with physical disabilities to achieve better health, to increase self-sufficiency, and to become more engaged in the community. With such a large group, this is a webinar. We've created a webinar, not a meeting, which means you will not be able to unmute or to turn on your video. If any of you want a certificate of participation, there will be a form for you to complete with 2 questions. We will put the link in the chat towards the end of the webinar, and the link will be in the survey that you receive when the webinar is over. You will use the Q&A. If you move your mouse around and you look at the menu on the bottom of your screen, you will see Q&A. That's where you can put questions for the presenters. We will put links when necessary into the chat. With such a large group, we may not be able to get to everyone's question. Please email us. Also, for those of you who cannot type your question into the Q&A, please feel free to email us after this. We're happy to answer questions for folks. We are recording this webinar, so we will make it available on our YouTube channel. When we start sharing the screen, you will be able to enlarge the interpreters by putting your mouse on the little line and dragging it left or right. I will ask our presenters to make sure they face the camera to assist anyone who is a lip reader. And so we're going to get started with Carolyn Wheeler. Carolyn is a project director at the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute. She leads HDI's online Lunch and Learn series, which is 4 to 5 episodes a year on the 5th Friday. And the next one and last one is on October 31st. It is called Disability Benefits 101. She was instrumental in the creation of the Heart Supportive Living Program by the Kentucky Legislature. This program provides funds to help Kentuckians with disabilities to live in their homes and communities and avoid institutionalization. She is a certified community partner work incentives counselor with 40 years of experience training and advocating for people with disabilities and their families. And we are so happy to have Carolyn with us. And Carolyn, if you want to share your screen,
Hey.
Go right ahead.
All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for being here today. And Liz, I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk about ABLE accounts, which are just incredible opportunities for people with disabilities. Well, right now, whose disabilities started before the age of 26 to save for the future. And I want to share a picture first of one of the reasons why I wanted to learn about stable accounts. And I hope this is large enough. I can make it a little bit bigger. So this is a picture of me with my friend Linda Montgomery. I'm also Linda's power of attorney. I'm Linda's representative payee, which means I manage Linda's money. And I've done this on behalf of 3 different people with intellectual disabilities since 1980 who didn't have anyone else in their life to do that for them. And so it's really allowed me the opportunity to empower people to really live their best life. So Linda, despite her intellectual disability, worked part-time I would say all of her adult life, and therefore contributed to her own Social Security account. And Linda, at age 66, that was her full retirement age, and she retired. And I can just tell you that Linda is living the good life. Linda's living the dream because she has money. Linda's also fortunate to have one of Kentucky's home and community-based waivers, which means I need to keep her resources below $2,000. So Linda, because she does have this significant Social Security retirement benefit from her own work record and is a woman of modest means, I need to put money aside for her so she doesn't go over that resource limit. And so Linda has Kentucky's ABLE program, which is a stable account, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. But so I have experience in setting up an ABLE account on behalf of a person, managing it, and just seeing the tremendous benefit that it is. So the best resource to learn about ABLE accounts is the ABLE National Resource Center. And this is actually where I work, first of all, the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute. But I thought, here it is, the ABLE National Resource Center's website. And I will copy and put that into the chat. I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with it and you want to know more about ABLE accounts, this is the place to go. This is the resource that will tell you what they are, how they work, and lots of really detailed information on how to fund them and how to manage them. So this is a presentation that the ABLE National Resource Center did in January of this year that is ABLE Account Basics. And so I'm going to go through, I didn't mean to make it larger, their slide presentation. So again, what the ABLE National Resource Center is, I've already talked about. They're the great resources that they offer. And this is actually a presentation that I found on their website that can be used as I'm using it today to help educate people about ABLE accounts. So ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And the legislation was passed in 2014, signed into law by President Barack Obama at the time. And then ABLE programs started being developed in 2015 and 2016. So our program here in Kentucky actually started in 2016, so we almost have a 10-year period of time. So as Liz said, it allows really millions of people with disabilities the chance to save and invest money without paying taxes on investment earnings, which is essentially a gift from the IRS. And Liz, I do want to confirm that you don't see a black box on the screen that's covering anything. I've got my video so I can see you all, but I want to make sure.
There is no black box.
Okay,
so
thank you.
We see you and the ABLE as a tool to obtain financial stability.
Thank you, Liz. I thought you might say something if there were a problem, but I just wanted to confirm. So again, many people with disabilities are receiving means-tested benefits such as supplemental security income, Medicaid, for example, HUD subsidized housing. And so ABLE accounts allows you to save without jeopardizing your eligibility for benefits. But I also want to talk to you if you're a parent of a child and you're saying, well, they don't get any needs-based benefits. Well, do this anyway, because you're able to save money for that child's future, protect their eligibility for benefits they might receive in the future, and your money, if you use one of the investment choices, will grow tax-free as long as the money is used for a qualified disability expense. Again, it's a gift from the IRS. So the annual contribution limit for 2025 is $19,000, but people who are employed could save more. So this is what is so amazing, that any amount of ABLE savings up to the plan's limit, which would be unlikely that really probably anyone has reached that limit. I know in Kentucky, ours is about $550,000. So you would have to have an ABLE account for quite a long time, probably even more than 10 years. But at some point, it could grow to be a significant amount of money. And it does not affect eligibility for all of the means-tested programs, such as free application for federal student aid, housing assistance, Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program, SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, or Supplemental Security Income, SSI, Medicare, entitlement to any of the parts of Medicare, and then Medicaid benefits, including Medicaid waiver services and Medicare savings programs. So Linda is fortunate to have, again, as I said, one of Kentucky's Medicaid waiver programs. That's where Medicaid comes into her life. And so therefore, I've got to keep her money under that $2,000 to maintain her eligibility for the services that she receives. So as stated earlier, ABLE accounts really are investment accounts, which provide opportunities for money to be invested across a range of what are called asset allocations, from really very conservative to more aggressive, and any growth in the account is tax-free. And then direct contributions into an ABLE account can be made by family, friends, or from a special needs trust or pool trust that Amy Dougherty will talk about after I finish, or a 529 college savings plan rollover. So any of these contributions do not count as income by federally funded means-tested benefits, unlike many other types of savings or investment accounts. So why save? Well, there's information and data that supports that people living with a disability have on average 28% more, it says, income, or need 28% more income a year to obtain the same standard of living as a comparable household without a member with a disability. And so ABLE account savings can help cover many of these extra costs. So currently, a person who is receiving supplemental security income, SSI, and or Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, since before the age of 26 would be eligible, or a person who has a disability that began before age 26 but has not received either of those Social Security disability benefits may ask their doctor to sign a disability certification, and all of this information would be on the ABLE accounts website for the state that you're opening an account, indicating that their disability began before age 26 and results in severe functional limitations. Or a person who works and as a result of working no longer receives SSI or SSDI, but still has a disability, continues to be ABLE eligible if their disability began before age 26. So this is Linda. And a person can open an ABLE account at any age. So for example, Linda's disability occurred at birth, but I didn't open her ABLE account in Kentucky, which is called stable, by the way, until she was actually about 66. And that age will actually increase to 46 in just a few months. So the ABLE Age Adjustment Act goes into effect on January 1st, 2026, which is estimated to expand ABLE eligibility to an additional 6 million Americans. So a person could ask their doctor to sign the disability certification if that's what they need in order to document their eligibility in 2025 to prepare for opening their ABLE account in January 26. So state ABLE programs. There are 46 state ABLE programs plus the District of Columbia. So the best way to find out what program would work best for you, again, is to go to the ABLE National Resource Center, and you can click down and find the program that's right for you. So how to use the map tool, you can click on the state where you live in order to find the ABLE program that can serve you. Now, if any of you are in the meeting today and you're from Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Wisconsin, not to worry. There are ABLE programs that serve the entire country. So, for example, Ohio is a national ABLE program. So you would open an account simply by clicking on this link here, and it says accepts out-of-state residents. So regardless of where you live, you could open an account through the Ohio Stable program. Kentucky is actually part of the Ohio Stable program. And I'll click on our website. And stable, you might think because we live in Kentucky, it has something to do with horses. Well, actually, that ST stands for state treasurer. As our ABLE program, as our many ABLE programs, are managed through state treasurer's offices because they are the financial entity for many states. So that's where our stable program is housed, but it's actually part of the Ohio Stable program in terms of how it is structured. So our program in Kentucky, as many programs are, you actually open an account online. You don't go to a bank, you go to the website and open an account online. Our program, and many, only takes $25 to open an account. And it's really not difficult to do as long as you've read through that state's website in order to understand just how to do it. So if I go back to the map, this survey comes up on every page. I guess they're getting data about how well their website is working for folks. So if I'm not sure if I can see it. I can see it. I can see the chat. If someone wanted to type in your state, I'd be glad to click on it. I will tell you that Virginia also is a national program. I think it's Virginia Able America that accepts out-of-state residents. And again, you would click here to open an account. And this page tells you, again, everything that you need to know about it. So this is an important point to note about that particular state's Medicaid estate recovery status. So there are maybe 20 states now that have passed legislation within their state that would say what this says, that unless required by federal law, the Virginia Department of Medical Assistance Services may not pursue Medicaid recovery claims against either the Able Now program or Able America accounts of Virginia residents. But for customers who received Medicaid benefits outside Virginia during the time they had one or other of these accounts, that state's Medicaid program may be able to file a claim for some amount of repayment upon death. So these are just things important to understand. Now, my perspective is that Medicaid will have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, frankly, for my friend Linda, for the support that she's had to remain independent and interdependent in the community. So if they were able to recover part of her stable account, I would say, that's more people that can be helped. But again, it's just important to know what will happen when the person dies. Again, the point to me of an ABLE account, though, is to spend the money and to spend the money on qualified disability expenses. So the ABLE National Resource Center also has a presentation about, I think I have open, here it is, about qualified disability expenses. So the legislation that created ABLE accounts, the federal legislation, is very clear that distributions from one's ABLE account is to pay for qualified disability expenses, or QDE. And these are expenses for items or services needed to maintain or improve one's health, independence, or quality of life. And the categories that they include, although they're not limited to this, but are education, housing, transportation, employment training and support, assistive technology, personal support services, health prevention and wellness, financial management, administrative services, legal fees, expenses for oversight and monitoring, and funeral and burial expenses. So one difference between an ABLE account and a special needs trust is that when the beneficiary of the ABLE account dies, money from the ABLE account can be used to pay for final expenses if that wasn't actually done prior to the person's death. Now, QDEs, or qualified disability expenses, should be broadly understood and are not limited to expenses for which there is a medical necessity or expenses that provide no benefits to others outside of the benefit to the beneficiary. So the person whose account it is called a beneficiary. And so that word is, you will see that word in this presentation and want to make sure you understand who's being referred to. ABLE accounts are actually owned by the person with the disability. However, someone such as myself, because Linda does not have the ability to open an account or to manage it, can also be opened by authorized legal representatives. So as Linda's power of attorney and also her representative payee, I am an authorized representative, but it is her account that I manage on her behalf. So what happens if an ABLE account distribution is spent for a non-qualified purpose? So if that happens, then the earnings portion of that distribution is included in that person's earning for the year. And the tax on any distribution is increased by 10%. And if you spend the distribution within the month of receipt, there is going to be no effect on someone's supplemental security income eligibility. But if a distribution for a non-qualified purpose or even for housing is counted as a resource if it's retained beyond the month of distribution. So, for example, if you took money out and if it's a non-qualified expense, then you can be subject to taxes on that distribution as well as a 10% penalty. If the money was taken out for either a non-qualified purpose or for housing, it needs to be spent that month. So if you took money out in September for housing, you need to pay for the housing in that month, or it can be counted as a resource the following month. So, but that one would think one would pay for it in that given month, but you'd want to make sure that you did. So this is something to know. ABLE accounts have what are called prepaid debit cards. So in Kentucky, one could have a stable card that costs an additional $5 a year, $5 a month. But distributions that are made from that stable account, Social Security receives that information. And so money distributed onto an ABLE prepaid card is considered a qualified distribution unless the Social Security Administration determines otherwise. So Social Security could ask about the intended use of the funds, and they might exclude the entire alleged value or amount if it's not used, again, for a qualified disability expense. So again, one needs to understand that it's not that ABLE accounts are not essentially just a line of credit that you can spend any way that you want to, and that one has to maintain receipts for expenditures from an ABLE account in order to have those either for the IRS, should the IRS want to audit the account, or should Social Security or even Medicaid want to know what distributions were used for. So again, the qualified disability expense categories are listed on this slide and include education, housing, transportation, employment training and support, assistive technology and personal support services, health prevention and wellness, financial management and administrative services, legal fees, expenses for oversight and monitoring, funeral and burial expenses, and then other expenses which the IRS may identify in regulation or policy. So for Linda, as an example, I paid for her out of her stable account for expenses that she incurred from the University of Louisville Medical Center when she had cataract surgery, because Linda needed to be anesthetized. So there were expenses, the additional costs that her insurance, both her Medicare Advantage plan and Medicaid, did not pay for. It was around $1,000 because she, $500 for each eye. So I paid for that using funds in her stable account. Linda fell and broke her pelvis in April of 2020. I remember where you were in April of 2020. In any event, after rehabilitation, for Linda to move back into her apartment, she needed to have additional personal support services. So while we were waiting for people to be onboarded to the agency. There's certain training they had to complete. I used money from her stable account to pay for those personal support services, to pay those staff. I also used money from her stable account to pay for a shower transfer bench. She also has a tablet. So it was, as you can see, those are all qualified disability expenses for which I do have receipts. I've never been audited, but if I were, I could document where those funds went to on Linda's behalf from her stable account. So basic living expenses, even though clearly everyone has basic living expenses, have been categorized as a qualified disability expense by both the Treasury Department and the IRS. And so people can pay for basic housing expenses as well as for things such as a smartphone, which is not related to someone's a medical necessity, but it really helps a person, as the example here, to be a safe and effective means of communication or navigation. And I bet most of you, I know I do, my smartphone is within a hand, I can reach out and touch it, that they actually assist so many people in that regard. So then there are a number of examples about how funding could be used for education expenses. So for example, you could use funds from an ABLE account for tuition, tutoring, books and fees, laptop, computer, work boots, tools, or uniforms not provided by an employer but required, costs associated with self-employment. Now, this is actually recorded. This is a webinar that's recorded. So if you wanted to listen to it and find out how the discussion went on these topics, because I don't know. I did participate in this webinar quite a few years ago, but I don't remember exactly what was said. But just know that there would be things that one would need to think about if it's not really clear, if there's some kind of a gray area about a qualified disability expense. I would add that the ABLE National Resource Center has this on their website, determining whether something is a qualified disability expense. And so you can click down and see what it says about specific areas. So I like this general guidance. So this guidance should be useful to the ABLE account owner and to their circle of support who is assisting, advising, or making decisions with the ABLE account owner. So if an expense fits a QDE category, it does not need to be disability related. So for example, payments for general education, training, college or vocational school tuition are categorized as a qualified disability expense, and housing expenses such as rent or mortgage, utilities, trash removal, real property taxes are also considered qualified disability expense categories that do not need a connection to the disability. The repayment of an overpayment of supplemental security income or Social Security disability insurance benefits would also be considered a qualified disability expenses. These overpayments fall under the category of financial management in IRS rules. And I am assuming that you know, but I will say IRS stands for the Internal Revenue Service. And so I don't want to get in trouble with the IRS. I don't know about any of you, but so I really, with Linda, when in doubt, it's best to use ABLE savings for qualified disability expenses and use non-ABLE money for a questionable expense. So if it's kind of in a gray area, you're not sure, I would err on the side of not using money from Linda's stable account and using it from her own personal account. So for example, while good arguments can be made for things like the cost of transportation to a casino, but not the cost of gambling for a relaxing evening with friends, this could raise questions by the IRS. It would be better to use non-ABLE funds for transportation to a casino. ABLE funds may be used for rent or housing or a telephone or cell phone or as a basic living expense. For example, freeing up other money for the non-ABLE qualified disability expenses. So for example, for Linda, Linda has season tickets to the Derby Dinner Playhouse right across the river in Indiana from Louisville. I use Linda's own money to pay for that. I don't take money from her stable account to pay for that because I don't see that as a qualified disability expense. So that's how I tend to think about things. If it's a gray area, I don't use her money from her stable account. Also, one is to look to public benefits first for key expenses, saving able funds for expenses less likely to be paid by benefits programs. So, again, depending on what benefits the person has, for example, with Medicaid may be able to pay for transportation, a special education program or state vocational rehabilitation agency may be able to pay for specially adapted computer equipment or a basic laptop or a tablet for the person with a disability. So again, this is just a really helpful page. I will copy and paste this link into the chat so that if you click on it, you again could just bookmark the page and you'd have it as a resource. So I'm kind of at the spot, I think, Liz, where we wanted to open it up for questions, and which I'll do
Yes.
my best to answer.
We have about 10 or so questions. I'm going to endeavor to get through all of them in, say, less than 10 minutes. So just so you know, let's see if we can do it.
Speed round.
Yes, yes. Um, see, is there any, there was someone who was applying for SSI and ABLE accounts for the first time, found it difficult. Is there any useful video on how to set these up? Maybe on the National Resource Center page?
I would, excuse me, my hunch is yes. If we go to resources, how about my hunch is yes, that you could
Okay.
probably find out how to open one on the ABLE National Resource page.
Okay. Next question. Am I understanding that for Medicaid, they could be up to over 200,000, but that 100,000 cap is SSI only?
That is correct. So if a person's account between contributions and growth grows to $100,000 and they receive SSI, then their SSI payment would be suspended until the amount gets below it, but it would not count as a resource. That is correct.
Great. Do all ABLE programs have an annual fee? If not, is there a way to find out which states do not have an annual fee?
Well, my hunch is every state has an annual fee because you have to figure out a way to operate the program. So that like the fee in Kentucky, the annual fee is like $27 or $29 a year. It's very reasonable, in my opinion. So I can't imagine. I don't know of any state that's completely subsidizing it. Now you could go to this map and you could click around and see if that's the case. But my hunch is most states would have an annual fee in order to fund the operation of the program.
Yeah. So there's about three questions about the common issue that comes up, Carolyn, when we do these, and that is about vacations and other leisure activities. And you may just want to reiterate what you just said a few minutes ago about gray area, but I'll let you have it.
So I think here's what you need to know is that any expenditure you need a receipt for it. So just know that if you're going to use the money for whatever it is you're going to spend it on, you have to have a receipt. So if you're going to spend it on vacation, you better keep every single thing that you spend and figure out a way to scan those or to have those. How so I would just go back to what they say on the ABLE National Resource Center. Again, general guidance that
Mm.
when in doubt, best to use ABLE savings for QDEs and use non-ABLE money for questionable expenses. So again, it's your decision to make. You may or may not ever be audited by Social Security or the IRS. Just know that you're going to need to be able to explain how what that expenditure is relates to the definition of a qualified disability expense.
Great. When people make distributions from their ABLE account to their bank account, do they need to do anything other than continue to keep receipts? So to prove to Medicaid SSI that it's not income that's come into their bank account.
Um, I don't know of anything else you'd need to do other than receipts. And
Well,
again,
and didn't
go
you
ahead,
mention
Liz.
you have to spend it Like if you put it in the bank
Well,
account for something, you got to spend it on that thing.
well,
Yeah,
really, Liz, as long as putting the money from the ABLE account doesn't put you over that $2,000 limit. That's why you need to spend it.
got
So,
it.
so typically, like with Linda, when I took out the $1,000 to pay for the University of Louisville Medical Center, I wrote the check post haste, and I also timed when I took it out. So let me add that it's not immediate. So it can take 2 to 3 business days for the money to come out of your ABLE account into your bank account. So I timed it so the money would come out early in the month. So I would have plenty of time to get the check written, mailed, and out of her account.
Yeah. Does housing do how does the category of housing include utilities?
Yes.
All right. Uh, is a person able to place a portion of their SSI benefit into their ABLE account? I know that a retro payment can be placed into the account, but wasn't sure if they could place a portion of SSI into ABLE.
Sure. I mean, you can, right. In other words, the SSI payment comes into your own personal bank account, and then you set up with your ABLE account, you could have an automatic deposit of whatever amount of money per month. So for example, with Linda, I have it set up with her stable account that $100 comes out of her bank account every month. Or I can go into her stable account and make a contribution. So the answer is yes. I would not advise putting your entire SSI payment into an ABLE account, because I'm going to suggest that not everything you want to spend your money on would be a qualified disability expense.
Can other earnings be put into your ABLE account, not
And
just your SSI?
oh, that's really the point to me, in
Yeah.
all honesty, that people, when you work, that's why you most likely will need an ABLE account. You may earn more money, and then if you still get SSI, SSDI, you'll have over that $2,000 limit. So absolutely. And in fact, you can contribute more money if you work. Let's go back to ABLE basics. I'm going to try to find that, not make you dizzy, and I may not. Well, in any event, you can contribute more money if you work. Up to
Yeah.
it's like over $15,000 in addition to the 19,000 in Kentucky.
Two more questions. Do you need a receipt if you use the stable card?
The stable card will have will show where your money went. I would still save the receipt.
Mhm.
That's just my being cautious.
Yeah. What types of transportation costs are qualified? Do you have examples of, I, I guess, TARC 3 or paratransit costs?
Paratransit, but my impression would be any transportation costs, that you're not limited to just using a paratransit system. If you had a car, if you need to get, I would think you could um, buy gas, you could get it repaired. That might be something I would, though, go back to here or to the website, because I haven't really needed to explore that for Linda, to be honest, to make sure I'm correct in my answer.
Well, we can find answers on the Able National Resource Center. I feel like we've got to move on. One last thing, though, if
Here
you
we,
could talk,
it says, does
sorry.
say purchase of a vehicle is
Okay,
evidently,
great.
I mean, that I knew would be a QDE. So my hunch is that anything related to transportation would be a qualified disability expense.
And can you talk about how people who get Social Security disability insurance, SSDI, how that relates in any way to ABLE accounts?
Well, again, you could have an ABLE account, and because to me, it's so much better than a savings account, because you're
Yeah.
going to earn more money on your money. So even if you, like with Kentucky Stable Program, here we go. So you have investment choices with ABLE programs. And so even the money market or the bank safe account will provide you with, let's see, this is the page that I wanted. Nope, but that's a good page to read. Well, in any event, you have choices. And so even the bank safe option probably has a 4% interest rate, but you can also invest your money across, again, what are called asset allocation classes from, really not much risk to greater risk, and your money will grow for you. But I also want to say, if there are people on the webinar today and you don't receive SSI or SSDI, you can still open a stable account or an ABLE account. I'm sorry. You don't have to be receiving that benefit. So for families who have young children, think about the power of compounding. If you have a young child, start now. And if it's $25 a month. But the other thing to realize is that, you could contribute, grandparents can contribute, aunts and uncles can contribute. So it really is a way to maximize saving for the future.
So I'm going to move on. I'm going to save some of these questions, y'all, but I'm going to move on to Amy's presentation so that, and we will have time after that to answer some questions too. So, Carolyn, if you can stop sharing, and then
Well, actually, I'm going to share her slides,
Oh,
Liz.
that's right.
You
That's
just
right.
need to unspotlight me.
Yes,
Maybe.
I will do that. And I'm spotlighting Amy, and there we go. And I'm going to introduce quickly Amy Dougherty. Um, uh, this workshop obviously features two people, including attorney Amy Dougherty of Bluegrass Elderlaw Attorneys in Lexington, Kentucky. Amy is a person with a disability who has practiced law for 40 years. She focuses on elder law, estate planning, and probate, including preparation of powers of attorney, wills, and trusts. And she assists clients needing nursing home stays to qualify for long-term care Medicaid. So we're delighted to have Amy here to share her expertise. Thanks, Amy.
You're very welcome. I'm honored to be here today, and I'm going to talk about other quivers in your arrow to have the best financial future and security that is possible. So, in addition to the able accounts that we talked about, sometimes special needs trusts are very, very valuable for disabled people and for their family members to assist them, or for them to disable them, or for the disabled people to assist themselves. So we can move on. I think this has been covered in the introduction. I thoroughly love the practice of law. I'm bumping up against retirement, and it makes me a little bit sad. I'll plan to be working for a handful of additional years, but I know that retirement is looming. But I've really enjoyed all of the issues involved in providing for elder clients and disabled clients. Okay, so let's talk about life-enhancing planning options. What our goal is when we look at the need for special needs trusts is to preserve government benefits for people while allowing those people to enjoy both family money and money raised by personal injury awards or by their own work, their own savings. So, and earnings. So there are three types of trusts I'm going to talk about today. First-party special needs trusts, third-party special needs trusts, and pooled trusts. So first off, the special needs trusts are of two varieties. Primarily, the ones that I draft are first party trusts and third party. So what do these do? Both of these can be managed by a pooled trust. I will get into that later, and the benefits of what a pooled trust can be. But the trust has to be structured, regardless of what kind it is, to supplant but not, to supplement, but not to supplant government benefits. That means that the money in the special needs trust cannot be used to pay for things that SSI pays for example. What SSI, Supplemental Security Income, traditionally pays for shelter. So the rules regarding food purchasing, another traditional element of what SSI paid for, has changed, and now you can purchase food through an S&T, a special needs trust, and that doesn't cause benefit reductions of your SSI money any longer. So we're going to now get into the various components of these trusts and why it's important to understand the difference. First party trust means that the party that owned the money is the disabled person. They had a right to the money individually in their own names. This money is money that these trusts, I'm sorry, can be set up by the individual disabled person, by their parents, by their grandparents, by a POA, or by a guardian or a conservator. This is commonly known as a payback trust. That means that if the disabled person does not use all of the money in the trust during the course of their lifetime, then the leftover monies in a first party special needs trust get paid to Medicaid up to the amount that Medicaid paid for the disabled person. So, for example, if you have $100,000 in a first party special needs trust because a grandparent left you that money in your own name. They did not leave it to you in a special needs trust, but their will said, to my beloved grandson, I give $100,000, and the grandson is disabled on government benefits. So the grandson himself, if he's an adult and able, can set up the trust, or any of these other people that I've mentioned. And that $100,000 would be in a trust. A trust is always managed by somebody else, not the disabled person. And so maybe a parent manages that for that person, and they pay out things that are needed for the disabled person that the government benefits don't pay for. I mean, that could be a wide range of things. Education needs, caregiver needs, vacation, all sorts of things can be used to be paid for this money. But what if the person dies and they've only used 80,000 of the 100,000 that's in the trust, and they've been on Medicaid, full Medicaid for a long time? Then the trustee writes a check for the remainder of the trust of the 20,000 to the Medicaid office and closes the trust at the death of the disabled person. There is a Medicaid estate recovery. Medicaid gets paid back. And so sometimes these trusts are just called D4A. That can be confusing, but it's the statutory code that's referenced here on the slide, 42 USC 1396P D4A. So if you Google that line, it opens up and it has the rules for the first party trust. So the money in this trust, and the example I mentioned, the $100,000, is not a countable asset. So somebody can be on SSI or on Medicaid, where the requirement is no more than $2,000 of countable assets. So they could have a balance in their checking account of $1,900 and have this pool, this first party trust that they're the beneficiary of, but somebody else is the trustee and managing it, of $100,000. So they could have $102,000 essentially, or the use of it, and still be on Medicaid in this example. And that's why these are so very important. So in order to qualify for this, the beneficiary has to be under the age of 65. If the beneficiary is over 65, most states don't allow these to be standalone first party trusts. So you can't, some states don't even allow you to use a pooled trust for this purpose if the person's over 65. The trust is, as I mentioned, and this is the key part, it's funded, the assets in the trust are belonging to the individual initially with the special needs, and they have to be set up as a first party trust. So can you go to the next slide? Okay, now we're going to switch to third-party special needs trusts. These are created and funded by someone other than the person who's disabled. So no funds belonging to the beneficiary may be placed in this trust, or it corrupts it, and it's all going to be countable and create a mess for the special needs person. So the benefit, just like the ABLE accounts, is multiple family members can place assets into this single trust. It's a common law sole benefit discretionary trust is another name for this. Common law means we inherited this practice. This third party trust isn't set up by a statute like the first party trust is. It's just something that's always been available. It was available as a trust by the good old Brits before we became a country, and we got it by common law as a sole benefit discretionary trust. So the beneficiary, the sole beneficiary is the disabled person, and then the discretion is on the part of the trustee to use items or the money in the trust for the benefit of the disabled person. There's no Medicaid payback provision because the disabled person never has a right to this money in their own name. Whereas the first party money that we talked about already, the disabled person had a right to it in their own name. They just wanted to set it up in a trust so that they could still maintain their government benefits and not be over the level that was the amount of assets required. Okay, so there's no Medicaid payback. And the trust creator can name whomever they wish as the contingent beneficiaries. So if there's $100,000 in this trust that grandparents left to a grandson, and the grandson dies, only the grandparents left the trust money as trust money. So their will says we leave a special needs trust for our grandson. $100,000 in a special needs trust for our grandson. So there's no Medicaid payback, I'm sorry. It's just the third party money. What happens if grandson dies only having used 80,000 rather than the whole 100,000 in our example? Well, the other $20,000 can go to the next beneficiary. So grandpa who set it up says to my special needs grandson, and then if he can't receive or use all the money, then it's going to go to my special needs grandson's siblings. For example, so that's a great benefit of somebody putting the money initially in a special needs trust and not giving it directly to a disabled person. What if you are married to a disabled person and you want that person to be able to use money but still qualify for Medicaid? Well, there's a special way to do that. It can only happen in a marriage partner's last will and testament. So they have to die. When they die, they can, in their will, fund a special needs trust for their surviving spouse. And these assets go through probate then to set up a special needs trust for a surviving spouse. But it does allow the surviving spouse to be on Medicaid and still get the use of this money and not have to have it pay back Medicaid. It could go on to other beneficiaries if they don't use it all. So that's a summary of a third-party special needs trust. Okay, now pooled trusts are a wonderful mechanism. And so in addition to the ABLE accounts we've talked about, if you're a disabled person and somebody's left you some money in a trust or somebody's left you money directly, those are good examples of when a pooled trust could be very handy. They are created by statute. Remember, we talked about the other trust being a D4A. This is a D4C. It's the same statute. So if you have curiosity about this, Google that list of numbers and you will come up with the language itself. It's always run by a nonprofit trustee. The beneficiary or the disabled person's funds are pooled together as one investment trust, but each person has a separate sub-account. So you might belong to there are several there, but one I am most familiar with is Life Plan of Kentucky. So Life Plan of Kentucky does have a separate trustee. This is a person who is just by law the manager, the trustee of this money, and they have lots of requirements and rules for the investments. But every client of Life Plan has their own sub account. And one of the things that's really cool about the pooled trusts is it can manage and hold both first party money and third party money. They can be pooled together, and the beneficiary or their legal representative can will sign a joiner agreement to an existing trust. And then the assets that remain in the pooled trust can be retained by the pooled trust and used for other disabled people. So that's a wonderful situation. Let me talk about the circumstances that I've found the pooled trust to be really useful in. So I may have clients that are already on Medicaid. They have, for example, Down syndrome or another condition where they're not earning a whole lot, but somebody gives them money or that either is or isn't in a trust already, but it's maybe $30,000 or $50,000. It can be a lot more than that, but it's expensive to have your money managed by a trust. So if you had to go to a bank and ask the bank to be the trustee of $30,000, most of them are going to say, no, that's not enough money for us to manage it. And you will eat up some of the trust money that you could use otherwise for your own benefit in management fees. And so with this pooled trust, it's really an inexpensive way to get very good investments and very professional trustee management services. And so I find it to be a really wonderful for clients who have just amounts of money they weren't really expecting, or it might be an amount of there's no requirement of the amount, but $200,000, for example, that they got from a parent in a special needs trust and a parent's will. If their sibling is going to manage the money, there's a lot of risk involved because most people just don't know what expenses should be used or not, or how to invest it, or what's going on. So it's a lot handier to have a trustee that's already very experienced and has a professional board overlooking their work and that sort of thing. So I highly recommend that in those circumstances. The other thing that can be useful about this is that the beneficiary or their family members don't have to pay much to set this up. The trust is already created, and they just sign a piece of paper that says, yes, I reviewed the trust, I understand how it works, and I'm signing to join on. And then they fill out other paperwork at the pooled trust. Whereas if you get a privately done trust, by a lawyer such as myself, that can run some money. And if you have it professionally managed by other folks, that can run additional money. And sometimes it's just not as beneficial to the person to have that circumstance as if they could just sign up to an existing well-run pooled trust. Okay, we could go to the next slide. So now we can talk about some scenarios that might illustrate this. And I don't know if there's some way that Carolyn could come back on and we both could kind of help answer this. The first one, and I just think these are wonderful examples that going through them can kind of put the pieces together for both pieces of the talk today of what Carolyn and I have been relaying. So first planning example is Wendy. She's 20 years old and has been disabled for about 4 years. So she became disabled at age 16. She lives with her parents, doesn't pay rent, and she is on SSI and Medicaid, but because she's living with her parents and not paying rent, she has a reduction in her SSI benefits as in-kind support from parents, basically. And we can just estimate that her share of household expenses is $500. What kinds of things could we do to plan better and make Wendy's existence more enhanced? Do you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so Carolyn, what could Wendy do?
Well, as you say on your slide, Wendy could open an ABLE account.
That's right. And we already talked about this, Carolyn did, but Wendy can put some of her own money if she has a side gig or part-time employment or whatever she's doing, any earnings or any gifts she gets from people, she can deposit in that ABLE account. And so could her parents if they, wanted to, but a total of $19,000 a year. And then she has the money to pay her parents through a rental agreement. If she pays them the $500 to reimburse, them for her expenses, then her SSI check bounces up to the maximum amount. So she's got a lot more planning opportunities, and she's, from my experience working with disabled folks, she may well feel like she's contributing more because she's actually paying rent like other 20-year-olds would be doing, and she's able to have more latitude in finances and more availability of money.
Quick question about that from a participant. If Wendy pays rent to parents, isn't that taxable income for her parents?
Well, this slide says pay rent. I always set it up as an expense reimbursement. The parents are not trying to clear money. When you rent an apartment from a third party, in terms of the calculation of the rent, that third party landlord has calculated what their actual expenses are, and then they've added a bonus because they're getting rental income, and that's how they're making a living, so to speak. But parents aren't doing that. She's only paying them what she's actually using. So I do rent back agreements for client families to help them verify that the person receiving SSI or other benefits has actually, covered their own costs. So in my rent back agreements, we might say that the mortgage payment that the family pays is $1,500. There are 3 adults living in the home, and so she's paying $500 of that mortgage as a rent reimbursement. But it's more like a reimbursement. It's not income. So no, I would, if I were setting this up for a family, I would make it clear that it's not income to the parents. Okay, now we have another example. Peter is 40 and has Down syndrome. He does work, and this is very common, and it's lovely to see folks in the community with who are working and able to be part of their own community in that way. He can only save $2,000 at a time. He does have a third-party trust established by his parents. He lives with his brother Michael, and also he doesn't pay Michael any rent. So what kinds of things could we do to plan for a better life potentially for Peter so he doesn't have to keep his checking account at the $2,000 level? Well, he can establish an ABLE account to hold his excess income. And he should pay rent to his brother. Again, the misnomer in the slides, he should pay back the expenses, and then he'll get SSI to the full amount. And then the trustee of the third-party trust, which is really an important thing, can deposit money into the ABLE account if need be. So if there's a third-party trust and it's supposed to be for the benefit of Peter, then the trust can just make the maximum payments every year to the ABLE account and have that as more readily available monies for his qualified expenses. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Carolyn?
No, I would agree.
Okay.
You do need to know though if he's working, yes, he would be eligible for the full SSI amount, but he's not going to get the full SSI amount because his SSI will be reduced some by his earned income. But it's much better, Amy, as you're saying, for him to start with the full amount because he will have more. You're right that he
Yeah.
will have more.
Yes.
Well, it will go up depending on how much his earnings are. But yes.
Right. Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
All right, and then we have another example of Lily, and she's a disabled adult receiving SSI, and she lives in Section 8 housing, which is also a means-tested program. She works at a daycare, and she needs some glasses and reliable transportation. Out of all of this, and again, the focus of this isn't for working well on SSI, but there are detailed rules about that, and I'm just trying to look at some big picture planning that could be done for these folks that those of you in the audience might be able to relate to. So if she needed glasses and reliable transportation, she can't get that on maintaining $2,000, balance in her checking account. So she gets this inheritance of $50,000, and what was the best way forward to maximize her lifestyle? She can create an ABLE account and put $19,000 in of the inheritance in that one. And then she can create the pooled first party trust, as I mentioned, for the remainder of that money. And she can pay for her new glasses out of either of those funds. And then she can pay for transportation on an ongoing basis to have out of either of those funds. So that's even though she has 50,000, she doesn't want it in her bank account because that will knock her off her other government benefits, including the Section 8 housing. So she'd have to find a new apartment, and it would be, really a devastating situation to her because $50,000 isn't going to go very long if you have to pay a full apartment fee and all of your own other expenses that were otherwise supported.
Amy, quick question I missed about the previous example. Mark, is that his name?
Okay.
And it was, can he pay his brother rent and then his brother put the rent money in his ABLE account?
Absolutely.
Yes, I mean, money can go in the ABLE account from any source.
Yeah.
Yes, so if his brother, I mean, in the example that we have, his brother is furnishing support because he is living with his brother free of charge. That is a support clearly. And if his brother wanted to continue supporting him, it could be a better situation for Mark to pay his brother a reimbursement for the expenses, and then his brother turn around and feed the ABLE account for the future. So, and that's
And
actually a very common situation. A lot of parents open up trusts or open up ABLE accounts for their children, and then their children, pay them expenses to maximize their benefits and to maximize, a sense of personal responsibility sometimes, and just that they're doing what everybody else is doing, which is using their income to pay for themselves. And then their parents turn around and on a continuous monthly basis, put the money other places for the future for that person. So I've had a client who works, and she's on SSD, drawing from deceased parents' work account as a disabled adult of a deceased worker. And so she was getting, income from that. Plus she's working, and her surviving parent was taking all of her money and putting it in her ABLE account, and he was providing for all of her expenses. And so she was bumping up to the $100,000. So
So
I've only seen that one time, but it is, possible. So
here's a Lily example question. If Lily buys a car in her name, is that an asset that puts her over the $2,000 limit?
most means
Not counted.
tested benefits enable or provide for a person to own a vehicle, and that vehicle is not a countable resource. So you would need to check benefit by benefit. But if you take $20,000 that's in your bank account, clearly that would be a countable resource and put you over the 2,000. But if you spend 18 of that on a vehicle, you've taken a countable resource, cash in the bank, and turned it into an exempt resource, car. So
Great.
that's typically how that works. But again, you would want to check each of the benefits that you're trying to apply for, that you are already on. One of the reasons that we want somebody to be able to maintain supplemental security income is because even in these ways about where you might lose some of it for other support and so on, if you can maintain any of it, then you automatically get Medicaid in Kentucky. And so that is a huge boon. I have had clients who tell me that they don't need any of this planning for their disabled child because the parents have enough money and they're always going to provide for them. And I like to say to the parents, once that child gets to be usually 26 and off the parents' insurance for healthcare, then it's very, very expensive to secure health insurance or to go without any. And so what you want to do is create a circumstance that provides for the maximum living benefits for lifestyle benefits for the disabled person, but still qualifies them for SSI because they will need the Medicaid piece to always have good healthcare insurance.
Although I would add,
Insurance.
Amy, to your example of when a person who loses their SSI because they now receive a benefit from a parent's work record as a disabled adult child, they are still eligible for Medicaid because of pass-through. I mean, the SSI is going to go away because the payment from their parents' work record replaces it dollar for dollar. Also, if you work and you lose your SSI or your SSI payment goes to zero, you are eligible for continued Medicaid coverage up to the state's Medicaid threshold amount, which in Kentucky is almost $45,000. So you really don't have to maintain $1 of SSI, and you're not going to maintain $1 of SSI as parental things change. So just know that there are other ways to be Medicaid eligible.
Right.
Because what you say, yes, Amy, is that people do need Medicaid.
Yes, but for people that aren't able to draw up their parents' record or their own work record through through that piece of Social Security benefits, it can be really important to maintain the SSI so that you do maintain the Medicaid. And the government benefits is a really complicated area, and so you don't want to just make fast decisions. They always need to be well contemplated and make sure you understand all the implications.
Amy, there are other questions, but I don't want to interrupt if you have more slides to go through.
I think that was it. So I'm done with my presentation, and I had at the end of my program the ABLE account website also. So just being prepared to talk about, as I mentioned, like all of the quivers and all of the arrows, I'm sorry, in the quivers for disabled people.
And Carolyn has opened up that link to the directory of pooled trusts if people want to go look at that to find pooled trusts. And there was a question about trying to find, are there useful websites to find qualified disability and elder law experienced attorneys in a given state, similar to you, Amy?
Yes, I belong to a couple of organizations. One is the Academy of Special Needs Planners. I think that's what Carolyn's put up there is their website. Another one is NALA, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So that's nala.org, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And if you open up that website, there's an attorney locator, and you can put a city or zip code and the amount of the number of miles you're willing to travel, and they'll bring up all of the member attorneys. So that can be a pretty good place to start.
It's National Academy of
Elder Law Attorneys.
Okay. I'm typing it into the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
NALA.org. Yeah, there you go.
NALA.org.
NAELA, National
Ah.
Academy Elder Law
Got it.
Attorneys.
Got it. Okay, so that, and then there was how can we locate an ABLE account sort of advisor or manager like Carolyn, Carolyn.
It's
So-
online, right? Yeah.
Well, you just go to the ABLE program. So in Kentucky, again, I'll just go back to the Stable Kentucky website. You really just you call them. You call the ABLE program. So in Stable in Kentucky, just call this 800 number, and those folks can answer your questions, probably help you understand what it takes to open an account. But really do your homework first, because if you spend time on the website, I think most of your questions will be answered. It's just it. So that would be my first thing. You do your homework and then see what questions you have. Or if you're going to look at another state, again, you just look at, I've got too many slides. I've got too many
Yep.
windows
I've got
open.
like-
But
I
anyway,
also wanted to
I
give
have-
a good shout out for the Social Security Administration website, ssa.gov. That website is really well done, and you can search around in there and find answers to basically all the questions you have if you spend enough time searching here. So that would be a really good spot. So it's for Medicare, for Social Security disability. They have question and answer formats for like being an adult child of a retired worker, adult disabled child of a retired worker, or of a deceased worker. They're being a surviving person. They have SSI on there and all of the requirements for that. So it's really a good website to begin to be familiar with and put your questions in.
So a few more questions. One is a follow-up of the question about Lily and buying the car. The question was, is it the same for buying a house? You explained how if you use, I think, money from the trust and it created an exempt asset when you use that money to buy the vehicle, I believe.
Yes, most government benefits do not count equity that you have in a home as a disqualifying asset. But again, you have to look, have to look at each benefit that you're trying to seek. I mean, if you're going to, you wouldn't own a home and also be trying to live in Section 8 housing. I mean, that's a rental situation. But for a lot of the Medicaid cases that I typically work with, where somebody's applying for long-term care Medicaid as a pay source to pay for a spouse's nursing home stay because they cannot live in the home safely anymore due to some sort of cognitive decline or physical disabilities or both, then a home owned by a spouse, even a home owned by the person who needs the Medicaid benefits under some circumstances, is not a countable asset. So I don't know if that helps
Yeah.
answer that question.
And just let your fingers do the walking. I mean, I just put that in the search. Here came a list of things that are excluded resources. These are kind of primary categories from some attorney's website, but it is your primary residence that's excluded.
So
Yeah, you can't be a real estate
right tycoon
and
right.
apply for Medicaid. So
right.
no, it's
right.
only the primary residence that's lived in by your spouse generally for long-term care Medicaid, or that you've owned for a long time and you just can't sell it fast enough, but you need Medicaid payments now because you need care now. So there are all sorts of rules involved with that. But the government doesn't care about your household effects in terms of accountable asset that would keep you off a benefit. Whatever clothes you have, that kind of thing is just fine if we're looking at this website. And
So
you can
let
always
me make sure I get to some of these questions before we get
Sure.
to the end. And this was back to the ABLE accounts. What happens to money left in an ABLE account after a beneficiary dies? Is that a payback type of thing?
Depends on the state. So as I said earlier, some states, probably 20 or more, have passed legislation, and Kentucky's one of them, where Medicaid estate recovery, they're not subject to claims by the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services, except are required by federal law, which, if you dive into that, has to do with the person's over the age of 55 and they have had long-term care services. The way I understand that, and you may differ, Amy, but I understand that that person would have Medicaid estate recovery. So
Right. If you've been on Medicaid by the before age 55, you wouldn't be, and presumably this could pass by probate. But if you were 55 and over and had been on Medicaid, Medicaid would be paid back first. So, and often Medicaid benefits are at least hundreds of dollars per month per recipient, and so there likely wouldn't be any money left over in the stable account to go to family members.
And so it's going to depend on the state. You click on every state. So
okay,
again, so that's so you have to click on the state to find out.
Okay, great. So there are two related questions. Carolyn, you already sort of helped with one of them, but it's about, let's recap the interaction, well, interaction is the only word I can come up with, between a trust and an ABLE account. Why have both? How do they affect each other? Let's just recap the benefits. A person can have both, basically.
Absolutely. And the ABLE account is like a checking account. I think of it in that way, to use for specific but pretty broad ranging needs of a disabled person. And it's very easy to put money in there monthly. So it's a checking account for earnings. And then the trusts usually are a larger amount of assets that just are funds for the trust, and then they're used more slowly for a disabled person. But it might be a $50,000 inheritance, or as an example, or it could be, a home that a parents have left to a disabled individual, and that's not something you can put in a checking account.
Yeah. And you could use those funds in the special needs trust and contribute to into the ABLE account from the trust.
Yes,
Yeah.
So a special needs trustee cannot just take cash out and give it to the beneficiary as cash. They can pay for things for the beneficiary, but the special needs trust is responsible to just pay third parties or vendors generally. It's not a cash account that you can hand money to the disabled beneficiary. Whereas the ABLE account, they just can get cash and carry it around and $100 bills in their purse if they would like to do that, the disabled person, and then, spend it on qualified benefits. So,
And also a trust, you can use funds. I don't know all the restrictions, but there are fewer restrictions than having to have a qualified disability expense
Right.
for
yes.
able funds.
That's correct. And also the disability can occur past, before, sorry, this disability can occur after the age of 26, or even after the age of 46, I guess up to 65. So also special needs trusts are estate planning tools, right, Amy? I mean, you can't
Yeah, it's
leave a life
passing
insurance. Yeah,
generally it's passing wealth from one generation to the
to the
next.
next.
That's kind of the backdrop, but it can be used for other purposes too. One of the things we didn't talk about, but sometimes special needs people have all their benefits set and they're living their best kind of low-key life, and then they might be involved in a car accident and get a big settlement. And so suddenly it's first-party money. They had a right to it in their own name, but we can't disrupt all their government benefits and their lifestyle through the government benefits. So we put that in a first party trust and somebody else manages it for them. They can't ask for them. The trustee has to say when the money gets dispersed and who it gets dispersed to, always for the benefit of the special needs person. But that's clearly different than running a checking account.
Yeah. And here's a final question. Can funds be added to a trust?
Yes, they can. But again, you don't want to mix first party money and third party money. So if the disabled beneficiary, they can't put their own earnings and their money in their trust and so on. So you have to
So
keep like money that came from someone else, parents, grandparents typically, or from, some kind of inheritance. You have to keep that separate from money that the person earned or they were just given outright.
So the person with a disability shouldn't add funds to a third party trust, for example.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah,
So,
don't do that.
okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
All
Because it
right,
makes the trust ineffective and you could lose your benefits. I mean, that's
right,
really not good. So if
right.
you have any questions, reach out. I'm happy to assist in whatever way.
Well, thanks, Amy, and thanks, Carolyn, and thanks to our ASL interpreters and our captioner. And we're delighted everyone joined us today. You will get a link when this ends. You will get a survey to pop up, and there is a link to the CEU form that you have to fill out if you want continuing education units. So that's it for saving for the future, and we hope you enjoyed it. And I am just making sure that I save my captions. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We
Mhm.
will see you hopefully in 3 weeks at Working While on Benefits webinar. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.